On August 3, 1897, readers of the Chippewa Times saw an article which summed up the thought that had been percolating in the town from at least the 1880s, when Benjamin Franklin Millard offered a small acreage to the city for a park. His offer, as well as several others, was rejected. With much prodding, especially from the women, an active search began. By February 15, 1905, the Daily Independent proclaimed, "We have the place for a park." It was promoting the area around the Glen Mill Pond, just 3/4 of a mile north of the terminus of the electric railway at the fairgrounds. It was hoped that the electric railway company would extend the line that extra mile. The Glen Mill Pond was becoming a resort area with cottages along the shore, and on the islands, gasoline launches were being placed in the pond, and there was a movement to have government and state hatcheries stock it with fish. Working quietly behind the scenes, William Irvine, manager of the Chippewa Lumber and Boom Company, provided the spot for a park in February 1906. It was an 85-acre plot along Duncan Creek that included the old stone quarry on the west bank, bordering the fairgrounds and extending north to the Glen Mill. The only stipulation of the gift was that the city accept the premises for park purposes. And speaking of the city, present-day listeners have an image of Chippewa Falls as it is today. But what was it like when Mr. Irvine and the Chippewa Lumber and Boom Company made the offer of land for a park? The high school was on the corner of Bay Street and Grand Avenue. The new Chippewa Falls Senior High School was yet to come. McDonnell Memorial High School would not open until January 1908. The site of the post office was still the Thornton property. The Hannah M. Rutledge Home for the Aged was 7 years away, and the Rutledge Charities Building 10 years ahead. The electric railway between Eau Claire and Chippewa Falls crossed the river on the wagon bridge on Main Street, traveled up River Street, turned on Bay to Spring, and made its way up Bridge Street, Elm Street, and Jefferson Avenue to the turnaround at the fairgrounds. The Carnegie Library, near the fire department and City Hall on Central Street, was 4 years old. The original park board, consisting of M.S. Bailey, president, Ed Reister, vice president, Henry A. Casper, secretary, John Theriot, treasurer, and John Hockenbrock, superintendent, appropriated $300 for the necessary clearing of underbrush and other work at its April 23, 1906 meeting. By May 22, 1906, a rustic bridge had been put across Duncan Creek. Improvements had been made at the springs under the quarry hill, and the sloughs were being drained to make lily ponds. However, funds were getting low. The only group offering financial help at that point was the Women's Club. The Daily Independent was promoting community help, to be led, of course, by the ladies, and they were not disappointed. The ladies added to their previous gifts when the Women's Relief Corps of the GAR gave a flag to be flown of Flagstaff Hill. Speaking of starting a subscription to support the park, the Daily Independent of June 1, 1906 said, "Who will start the movement? Let it be the Women's Club. They are doing all the good things." Not to be outdone by the women, Rufus Jenkins raised $550 by subscription for improvements in the park. One of those early improvements was the 4-foot-wide cement stairs in the hill near the springs. The Women's Club, in conjunction with the park commissioners, secured the services of a landscape gardener. He suggested the advisability of acquiring the property on both sides of Duncan Creek as far up as the Glen Mills before it was put to other uses. It was at this time that Mr. Irvine purchased the 4 acres known as the Schmidtmeyer Tract. 15 acres of the Blum property, which included the Old Stone Quarry and 2 acres from Myron Martin. On December 18, 1906, Mr. Irvine, L.C. Stanley, and the Chippewa Lumber and Boom Company donated a total of 53 acres so that the park property, now having 163.5 acres, extended on both sides of Duncan Creek from Bridgewater Avenue to the Glen Mills. The park continued to grow. Early in 1907, the Chippewa Falls Ladies Art Society pledged to donate the entry gate, which was originally planned to be gray granite pillars. A deer park was constructed. The streetcar company improved the turnaround and put in the station. Roads were laid out. 2 steel bridges were put across the creek. And the bandstand, which had been near the speed barn on the fairgrounds, was moved to the park on the east bank of the creek. 2 swans sent from New York took up residence in the pond that had been prepared for them. It was at the May 6, 1908 meeting of the Park Commissioners that it was decided to allow no concessions of any nature for which a money charge was to be made within the park limits. This year saw another splendid addition to the park. It was the lake, which was christened in a formal ceremony. The name was chosen by ballot, and Sue Hayes performed the honors, breaking a bottle of sparkling water from the spring in the park into it, saying, "I am Glen Loch." The lake was offered by its owner, the Consolidated Milling, Elevator, and Power Company, headed by A. B. McDonnell, for boating and picnic purposes in the summer and ice sports and races in the winter. A band played on Sundays at the bandstand. That summer, Mr. Irvine provided the pavilion. A very special event took place in Chippewa Falls from September 14th to 18th, 1908. A homecoming festival for all former Chippewa Falls residents was held in conjunction with the State Fair. A highlight of the celebration was a grand free picnic and speeches at Irvine Park, September 16th. An estimated 8,000 to 10,000 people arrived to take part in the 4-day event. They represented all areas of the country, from coast to coast and border to border. The picnic and speeches were originally to be held in the pavilion, but had to be moved as construction was not complete. They took place around the bandstand on the east bank of the creek. In October of the same year, the park commissioners sold 1,000 yards of gravel from the park to Mr. Hazelton, a contractor, to use in the construction of the new post office. 1909 saw the construction of 4 closets for the ladies. The outdoor privies were genteelly described as 1 to be 6 holes and 3 to be 4 holes. Cinders for the roads in the park were hauled from the sugar beet factory in 1910. The Chippewa Lumber and Boom Company added 100 acres to the park in 1912. As the park expanded, scenic drives were added. Bridges spanned ravines, and the rear entrance gate was put in place. The Rumble, or Rumbly Bridge, originally named the Bridge of Pines, was built in 1914 and paid for by William Irvine. The road which ran through this scenic area was surveyed by Sidney O'Neill, son of one-time Mayor Eugene O'Neill, who was an engineering student at the University of Pennsylvania at that time. And this was only the beginning. Over the years, the community has given generously to the park. Mr. Irvine, for whom the park was named, gave most generously all his life, from the first gift of land through his many gifts of money. For band concerts on Sundays in summer, the pavilion, the new bandstand, the Bridge of Pines, and his trust fund for the park. The most recent gifts have been in the acres of wilderness given by Dr. Nicholas Fatou and a donation of $150,000 in the will of Ruth Irvine Richter. To try to list all of the community, civic, patriotic, educational, and just plain folks gifts, donations, and help over the years would be to risk missing many who have given generously of their time and money and making Irvine Park the beautiful recreational spot it is today. Let it suffice to say that Irvine Park has been a community project from its earliest days. Time and space do not permit a complete catalog of all the workers who have been a part of the park, nor the natural and man-made troubles they sometimes encountered. The flood of 1934 on Duncan Creek. Senseless things like smashing park benches or wantonly killing park animals. Or the devastating tornado of 1958. Longtime park superintendent Charles Ermatinger, not able to face the destruction of the tornado, handed over the reins to Ralph Wolf, whose long and faithful service was curtailed by a heart problem. The encouraging things are the love displayed by people, grown-ups, and children alike who give of their time and money to keep Irvine Park special. The never-say-die attitude and love is perhaps best expressed in a letter which appeared in the Voice of the People in the Chippewa Herald-Telegram when Billy died. Dated April 3, 1960, it read, "Gentlemen, having just read in the March 31st Herald-Telegram that Billy, one of the deer in Irvine Park, had died, I feel a further word should be said about him. He was unlike any other deer there since the park was started in 1906, and in my opinion, deserved more than merely saying he died." Several years ago, Billy jumped into the buffalo pasture at night, and since he chose the buffalo as companions rather than his own, we left him there. He was quite an attraction, and probably posed for more pictures than any other animal we had. As far as we knew, an incident like this hadn't happened in any park. Has anyone ever heard of a wild deer jumping in with a herd of buffalo? The letter was signed Charles J. Ermatinger. If one may be allowed an editorial comment, it would be that this letter, more than anything else that I have read, sums up the unique and beautiful nature of the place that was the ultimate response to the Chippewa times. Let us have a park. A park in which to enjoy the changing seasons. To view the artifacts from days gone by. To exchange views with its friendly or garrulous inhabitants. To enjoy a picnic or a concert. The playgrounds. Or perhaps to stroll down its nature trails. Or drive at a leisurely pace through its scenic splendor. Indeed, we have a park.